Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today was suggested by Bruce, so thank you for that. I appreciate any suggestions you guys have. And if you have any more, please do let me know. And it is on that of the Lyon Sisters. This case actually happened in the mid-70s and would take quite a long time to sort of figure out what actually happened to them. To an extent, at least anyway. Let's get into it. So, the Lyon sisters consisted of Sheila Mary Lyons. She was 12 years old, and she had a younger sister called Katherine Mary Lyons. Their father was called John, and their mother was called Mary. And together, they ended up having 4 children altogether, so it was, a decently sized family of 6. And they were raised in Kensington in Maryland, where their father worked as like a radio personality. So, we are going to go to the 25th of March in 1975, and it was Easter. And the family decided that they were going to go, because the girls were off school and whatnot, that they were going to go to this sort of restaurant for pizza. It was called the Orange Bowl. It was quite popular, and people really, really loved it. And so that was basically the plan. However, the girls had actually asked if they could go to see these Easter exhibits, like before they went to eat the pizza kind of thing. So Mary thought about it, and she actually thought that most of the town would be at this Easter celebration exhibit thing. And so she did decide to let the girls go. Obviously they were quite young, 10 and 12, but lots of people were going to be there, and so that is why a massive reason behind why she let them go. Obviously this was the 70s. She was right in that thinking as well. Most of the town turned out to see these Easter exhibitions. She told the girls, be home by 4, and that was that. Off they went. Apparently they set off at 11 AM and were supposed to be back by 4, obviously. And then 4 o'clock comes round and the girls do not come home. Now, she doesn't initially panic straight away, because it's kind of normal for the girls to be a bit late. Not super duper late, but, a little bit late. And so she's waiting, she's thinking, they're going to be here soon. Then 5 o'clock comes round. And at this point is where more of the anger kicks in, because she's really annoyed that she told them to be back by 4 and they haven't come back yet. And so she just thinks that they're disobeying her and that, they will probably be back soon, but it annoyed her that they weren't back by the time they were supposed to be. She figured that they would still be home, that they was just running a little bit late. Then 7 o'clock comes round, and Mary at this point realises that something is very wrong. Her girls, okay, sometimes maybe they were late home, but they wouldn't have been this late home. And so she reports them as missing. The police jump straight on it. They launch an investigation immediately, and they begin looking for them. They begin putting a timeline together as to the girls' obviously actions. They're asking for people to come forward to see if anybody had seen them, so that they can obviously add that into their timeline and things like that, like confirm sightings of them. And so as they're putting this together, they find out that obviously they left at 11. Then the girls were seen at the shopping centre at 1 PM. This was outside the Orange Bowl, like they had planned for lunch, the pizza lunch. And it is where they were seen speaking to an unidentified male. This man was described as being sort of middle-aged, quite tall, like over 6 foot tall, and was wearing a brown suit. He had a briefcase, a recorder, and apparently there was also other children around too, like around the area. About an hour later, the pair are both seen inside of the pizza enjoying their lunch. So obviously after speaking to this random guy, who we don't know who it is, they were seen after that. So they were still okay after that. And that was actually by their brother. So their own brother saw them inside of there. Then at about 2:30 to sort of 3-ish, the girls are actually seen by one of their friends walking in the direction of their home. So they were heading home in time for when their mother asked them to, but they never made it home. So what happened to them? A friend of the girls, who was about the same age as them, had said how she saw a man who was just like awkwardly staring at them at some point. She described him as being 20 to 30-ish, and they did actually make a composite sketch of him. And at this point, the police are trying to figure out, like, why have these girls gone? Like, Mary did not ever in a million years think that they'd run away. They had no reason to. They were also very young, you know, at that point. So she didn't even think that that was possible or even remotely on the cards, and nor did the family. And then you've got to question other things like, have they been kidnapped for like a ransom or something like that? But no ransom was ever given. And so they didn't believe that that was why they were taken. There was also thoughts as to maybe more sinister reasons as to why the girls were taken. And let me just tell you as well about the ransom. People did ring up a lot and make a lot of jokes about this, which is just heartbreaking, and it's just wrong. And on one occasion, I believe John, actually, the father, pulled money out of the bank and left it somewhere because somebody rang up about it. And that money was never actually collected. So whether they were all hoaxes or the person who actually did that to get some money out of them, but then just never collected it because they knew the police were there, who knows, but, you know, it was never collected. The police had spoken to a lot of people, and yet they had no leads, no suspects, no evidence of anything. The girls had just vanished, and nobody knew where they were. They literally even discussed, like, that maybe the girls had been taken and sadly killed, and the remains buried, burnt, just disposed of in some way. But even the officers at the time kind of dismissed that and said, like, if they were buried, an animal would have brought up their bones or something like that. So they were just very dismissive of the idea from the offset. And of course, the case did go cold. After 5 years, I believe one of them officers resigned, and it was passed on to some new inspectors. And various detectives would go on and off of this case. They wouldn't really get anywhere. And the case would remain unsolved for many years. There was an instance where they did actually get a tip from an 18-year-old man. He was called Lloyd Lee Welch. He said to the police he'd seen 2 girls that were abducted, and the abductor was walking with a limp. Now, that does come into a big thing because at the time, the main suspect that they had in the case, which I don't actually know who that was, he walked with a limp. So, you know, it kind of tied in. However, the police just dismissed it and just said that they thought that he was making it all up and really embellishing on the details because he wanted the money. Like the reward money that was put up, they thought that he was making it all up for that, basically. And again, the case just went cold and remained unsolved. Then, 38 years later, one of the detectives, once more, a new one called Chris Humrock, he started looking into the case again. And this is where he came across what Lee had previously said, like a statement. It was like a 6-page statement, and he started looking into the details of that. So, Lloyd Lee Welch was actually serving time in prison at the time of this inspector speaking to him for molestation charges. And I believe he was on like a 30-year sentence or something like that. And so he goes to speak to him, and originally he denies everything to do with the girls. He had nothing to do with it. He didn't know what happened to them. And then he mentioned another name. He mentioned Ray Malinsky. And this was a name that had actually been associated with the case for a good many years. However, Malinsky had actually passed away in 2004. He was serving the sentence of the murder of his wife and child at the time. He turned himself into the police, and he was sentenced to a very long time in jail. Now, whilst in jail, he did actually brag about how he knew who kidnapped the girls. And then, sadly, the worst fears of the Lyons family were confirmed when they found out that their daughters actually did die 38 years ago. They were murdered. And all that time, they just really lived and clung to the hope that the girls were out there somewhere, that they were together, and that one day they would come home. And obviously, when you say something like that, you've lived onto that for so long. It must have been it will have been so crushing to them. Now, apparently a tip did actually come in 2001, and it basically said that, you know, he knew who it was who had kidnapped the girls. They did contact him in 2001 too, but he said that he knew who kidnapped the girls, but that he wasn't going to say anything until he was going to get a prison transfer, which sadly never happened because he died in 2004. So the information that he held, that he knew, it just died with him because he never told the police, he never told anyone, well, as far as we know. So with regards to his part in the case, we don't know whether he was involved or not. He said that he knew who did it. Whether he had a part in it or not, who actually knows? But what I do find strange is when the sketch of When there was a sketch that was released of, you know, the person that was seen, that younger person, it actually looks very much like the mugshot of Welch. So, yeah, similarities there, a lot. He had long hair, and it just I'll put them up and you will see. They look very similar. After interviewing him quite a lot, he did finally admit to helping to kidnap the girls in 75. He said that the girls were kidnapped for gross reasons, you know what I mean, despicable reasons, and that he hadn't done any of that, but the investigators do believe that he did burn one of the girls' bodies. So, because he did confess to being involved in their kidnap, but not, you know, not doing anything else, said he didn't murder them, nothing else, because of that link, they were actually able to tie him into the case, and so he was charged on top of the sentence he was already doing. He got another 48 years on top, and he was going to be, I can't say that word, liable for parole when he was 80, which is probably not going to happen, to be honest. Good. I do actually think that he pled guilty to the murder at some point as well, or I might be wrong with that. I'm sure I've read that somewhere. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that, but like later down the line, I assume. So the girls did get some justice, but there are still many more questions as to whether he was the sole perpetrator or not. Like I said, this guy said that he knew something about it. Whether he participated in it or not, I don't actually know, and we will probably never know. But at least after all them years of the girls' sort of case being a missing persons case, we now finally know who was involved to an extent and what actually happened to them, and the families can finally know that information, even if it absolutely is like the worst news ever. It absolutely breaks my heart what happened to them. You know, they were so young, 2 little girls just out having fun, and just this monster just took them, and it's just the worst. It's awful. The poor family, what they had to go through all of these years. And they're still going through, really, because, you know, when it was finally solved after all them years, it was all dragged up again. It was all brought back, and the family just basically said that it had been so long and they just wanted to go home. And it's just awful. But yeah, that is the end of the case. If you guys have enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for similar content. Anyway, that's all I have today on the case of the Lyon sisters. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.